3D for the web is something that can take your designs to the next level. And you can use that today on several ways. So some of them are more complex, some of them are more realistic. However, do you know that you can use Lottiefiles and Webflow to create some very interesting visual compositions using 3D? Today, I'm going to show you my process to create a very interesting, very cool scroll-based 3D interaction using Webflow and Lottie. So let's check it out. So this is what we're going to create today. Actually, not the whole landing page. This landing page is already done on Webflow. I'm gonna share this as a free clonable on my account, and you can clone it and see how I built the whole thing. But the point here on this page, and what I'm going to show you today how to do, is this scroll interaction. So take a look. So as I scroll, we see this 3D image here. But as I keep scrolling, then it animates itself. Some UI elements showing up behind the image, right? We have this gradient light effect here as well showing up. So there's multiple things happening at the same time. And we have this 3D animation happening on scroll. And it's a transparent 3D animation. So it's not like something solid. As if like a video, and it's just using a little bit of Lottiefiles and image sequence. It's very simple. I'm going to show you how to do this very soon. So this is the whole landing page. Again, I'm going to share this as a free clonable later, so stay tuned. And yeah, so how can we do 3D for the web? Like, there's multiple ways you can do 3D for the web. The first one obviously is using 3JS. So 3JS is like, let's say an abstraction layer on top of WebGL, which is how you implement real 3D on web. So it's very powerful, very interactive. You can create like anything, like the sky is the limit. You can do anything you want. But it's very hard to achieve realistic renders with 3JS. Like, you need to do a lot of stuff to make it very good. And the learning curve to use WebGL and 3JS, it's not very straightforward. There's a lot of stuff you need to do to create like a very basic scene. And yeah, it's very good, very flexible and powerful, but you need to do a lot to get something good, right? So that's the first way you can use 3D for the web. The second way to implement 3D for the web is using videos, obviously. So if you have like a website and you want to include a background video, something very cool like 3D scene, it's easy. You just render your 3D scene as a video and just put it there. Very easy. You can have very realistic renders because like it's just a video. You can do whatever you want, and then at the end the file format is just a video. It's not like WebGL when you need to do a lot of stuff and your computer needs to process a lot of things to make the scene look very realistic, right? It's easy. Well, background transparency, like the things that the example I showed before, it's somewhat supported. Like you can render video as WebM format, but WebM only works on WebKit browsers like Chrome, etc. For Safari, you need a different file format. It's a little bit like complicated. It's not easy to render that second file format, so it's supported, but it's not very easy to implement, right? And it's a video, so how do you make it interactive, like specifically with Webflow? There's no way to do that. It's not really easy. You need to have at least some custom code to create like a scroll animation that plays a video. So it's not very straightforward with Webflow. And the third option, like I said, Lottie. So Lottiefiles. Well, you can just render a scene as a sequence of PNG images, put it together inside a Lottie, and then you have a realistic render with background transparency. It's very easy, and since it's a Lottie file, you can easily implement that and make it interactive with Webflow, because Webflow supports out of the box Lottie files. Just throw the file there and just use interactions to make it interactive, right? That's exactly how I did this demo right here. So this is just a Lottie file, a sequence of PNGs inside a Lottie file, and just using Webflow interactions to make this animation as you scroll. So I'm going to show my process. This is my process to create the Lottie file I just showed you. And the several steps here. First, we'll go into Figma. We create the SVG file for the logo, this Phantom UI logo that I created here. Then I'm going to take that logo and jump into Blender 3D, which is my tool of choice for any 3D work. And there we're going to turn that SVG into this image right here, right? It's 3D element inside Blender. I'm going to also show my setup for the scene. It's not a tutorial about Blender, but I'm going to show you the basics for getting this image sequence for the animation and how the animation works in Blender. And after that, we're going to jump into After Effects, put everything together, and create a Lottiefiles. And then finally, we're going to jump into the Lottiefiles platform, where we're going to use the Lottiefiles optimizer to turn this animation to something that it's not killing the performance of our website. So we're going to optimize there. And finally, we're going to jump into Webflow and add a Lottie animation and make this work on a scroll-based direction. And that's it. So let's get into it. First thing is, this is my Figma file. So I designed this template here on Figma and turned into the Webflow landing page you saw. And this is the logo that I created, like an imaginary logo for imaginary product, just for the sake of this tutorial. And then I just export it as an SVG. So basic stuff. You can export an SVG and turn it into a 3D element in Blender very easily. So then let's take a look at Blender. So this is the Blender UI, and for anyone that is not familiar with Blender or 3D softwares, this is the viewport where we build our scene, right? And here at the top, there's different views that we use to configure our scene. So layout is where you like define the basics of the scene. Then here on shading is where we actually add the materials, like we configure the background, configure the lights, we configure the metal material that I use on this image here, on the object. And then after that, we have the animation tab where we create the animation, this animation right here, right? And that's it. And then this side panel here is where we configure a few things. For example, we configure our scene, we configure where we're going to render this, how this should be rendering, and etc. etc. Okay, so here on the viewport, basic things we have here. I have a setup of 4 lights. All of these squares here are lights on Blender. It's called area light. And I'm setting up the colors for the area lights. So we have some that are pink, some of them are blue, okay? And here we have our camera. This is the camera that it's pointing to the object. So if I hit 0 here on my keyboard, this is the view that renders this, okay? And yeah, and this is our logo, SVG logo turned into 3D. So this is already done here, so I can do that again. Let's do it again. Delete this. So the way you do it here is you go to File, Import. Where is it? Scalable Vertical Graphics, SVG. So I click here, and I have my logo right here. FontUI.svg. Import. You see nothing because the scale of this is very small. But if you zoom in here with your mouse, you see that it's right here, right? So let's select it here. So here, this is like the panel where you see like the layers, like the collections and the objects you have on the scene. We have 2 curves here. One is for the circle and the other one is for the phantom itself, okay? So let's select both. And let's hit S to scale up. All right. So it's big, but it's flat. It's not 3D at all, right? And the thing is, like, when you import SVG elements on Blender, generates these SVGs as curves, which is different from the mesh. It's like advanced stuff for Blender modeling. So a curve is something that looks very similar to when you're editing an SVG on a graphic design software, right? So if you hit tab here, you go to the edit view and you see that it's just a collection of points, right? So you can mess around here, just like any graphic design software like Figma, for example. So to make this 3D, we need to extrude this and add some bevel to make this look better, right? So when you select a curve here on Blender, then you have several options here, but you see this icon, which means that it's the curve settings. So there's a lot of stuff here, but you don't need to worry about any of these things except from the geometry and the bevel settings. Okay, geometry is actually where you make this 3D. So the extrude field you can drag here, and you see that it starts like turning into an actual 3D shape, right? Now it's 3D shape. Let's do 0.1. Maybe less. Yeah. 0.05, it's good. And you see that the edges are very it's hard edges, right? We don't want that. So bevel is where you add some softness to the edges. And if I start moving here, oops, a lot, right? Let's bring it down. 0.1. 0.1 is good. So yeah, that's it. That's how you turn a SVG into a 3D element on Blender. Very easy, right? I think this is too much yet. Let's do half of it. Yeah, and let's do the same here. No, it's missing a 0. Yeah, good. Yeah, it's not the same thing. Maybe with the bevel. What is the bevel level here? I can just copy and paste here. Let's see. Yeah, good. Good. So we have these two different objects here. And you see this dot, this orange dot here. It's very small, but you can see here in the middle of the 3D world. And this dot is actually the center of your geometry, which means that if I hit R and start rotating, it will rotate around this dot. But we see on this effect that everything is rotating in the middle. So what you need to do, this is like the default when you import an SVG. It's always on the side, not on the middle. So we need to change the origin of the geometry to make the rotation and all the animations we do something that works the way we want it to do, like rotating from the center. And the way you do this on Blender, you select your shape, go to Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry, meaning that it will take the center of the geometry and will set that as the origin. So if I click here, then we see that the origin dot move it to the middle of the circle. So if I hit R and start rotating, yes, it's rotating from the middle. If I hit R twice, which is a free rotation, it's rotating from the middle. Okay, let's do the same for Phantom here. Set origin to geometry, and now yeah, it rotates. Great. So we have our shapes right here. And if I change now to let's move this to the middle. Okay. And here at the top is the different render modes. So now is viewport is the default view where you can actually build the layout. Let's move to the shading tab. Shading tab is where we actually add materials. So you see here at the bottom, I can delete all of this for not using it. See at the bottom, the node editor from Blender. This is where the magic happens here for materials and etc. So right now, this is the world settings. So it's simple, just a background, a dark background color. So if you click here, you can change the word background. Let's change this to the viewport shading where we have some. It's closer to the final render. And you see here that now we have our shape. Our shape is receiving the light. So all these lights that we configure here, right? It's receiving the lights and the world is dark. So if I change the color here, the world color changes as well. And now I need to add materials to these two. Like it's okay, but it's not like the metal glossy material that I want, like the one that I use here, right? So we need to change here from world to object. So it's selecting the object that I imported. By default, SVGs come from like a standard material. This is where you select the material for the object. Or you can go here as well, material properties, and change here. So if I click here, we see that we have the default standard SVG material and another material that I configured before called metal. If I select here, it changes because now it's different material, and it changes again. So now it looks like metal, and this is like my, sorry that it's too small, but this is my node setup for this material. And like I said, I'm not going to give you like a tutorial about how to configure materials. There's tons of tutorials out there, very good tutorials about materials for Blender. So the only thing you need to know is that just add the metal material and that's it. So your SVG logo is ready to animate. So we need to animate this, right? So if I hit 0 on my keyboard, it will move everything to the view that is going to render everything. And well, it's not like this, right? We need to start like this, and then we need to rotate everything. So there's two things that I need to do here. First, let's get back to the layout. The way things work here is that the rotation of one of them affects the rotation to the other. So if you see like the phantom is rotating to this position, and at the same time the circle is rotating around the phantom, but it's also following the orientation of the phantom. So it starts like this, like kind of flat on the ground, and then goes like this. So there's two different rotations happening here. One is for the phantom and one is for the circle. But the circle needs to rotate along with the phantom itself. So it has its own rotation, but it follows the rotation of the phantom as well. How do we do that? We need to parent things here. So the circle needs to be children from the phantom. So the phantom is the parent, and the circle is like the children. If I rotate the phantom right now, you see that it stays at the same place, right? Let me rename this phantom and circle. So to make this a parent of this, I need to select the circle first, select the phantom later, then we on the keyboard we hit Ctrl P or Command P and set parent to object. Now you see that the layer for the circle disappeared, which is like not true. It didn't disappear, it's just inside the phantom. And now if I rotate the phantom, the circle follows rotation, but it also has its own independent rotation, right? So if I rotate like this and rotate the phantom, everything follows. Good. So everything is parented right now, ready to animate. Let's get back to the shading layer where we have our scene, and now we want to, so let me select the phantom, and want to rotate this to something like this. So it looks similar to what I did here, right? So it's not perfect, but yeah, it's kind of like this. This is how I want, right? Okay, now it's time to animate this. Let's just go to the animation tab and hit 0, so we make sure that we're seeing on the same like view that's going to render everything. We have here the animation dope sheet. This is how it's called here on Blender. This is actually where you added the keyframes for all the animations you want to do here. So you can animate lights, you can animate the camera, you can animate the geometry, the logo, anything, right? So here we want to animate the logo and the circle and make them look exactly like this. Let's record this position. And it's very easy to actually do these kind of animations here on Blender. Like, you see this little circle here? It's called auto keying, which means that you can just like move to different keyframes in your timeline and just rotate things, move things around, and then the keyframes will be automatically created for you. It's similar to After Effects, kind of resembles After Effects in a way, right? And okay, so let's just hit R and enter to make sure that we have the keyframes right here for the phantom. And then here at the final one, let me go to the object properties. So you see here that everything is green, which means that everything is being animated. And we want to rotate this. Let's see. I want to create some keyframes right here. So let's click here, make sure that we're going to create some keyframes, and then we're going to modify them 0, 0, 0. And then let's rotate this 90 degrees. No, this, yeah, 90 degrees, and that's it. So if I move now my keyframes, my timeline, you see that we have the animation happening between two keyframes for the phantom. That's exactly what we want. Great. Now we just need to animate the circle. So for the circle, let me remove all of this because we just want to rotate. Let's see, the X, no, the I, no, the Z. What is the best property to rotate? Yeah, the I. So we're going to rotate on the I axis. Just on the I axis. So we can't use here to control the rotation. We want like a clean rotation just on the I axis, on the object I axis. So let me click here to make sure that we create a keyframe for the I axis, which is on 0 right now. And then we move to the last keyframe, and now let's do a full rotation. All right, and now if I move here, there you go. We have our animation ready, just like this one, right? Perfect. The animation is ready. So it's ready to render. How do you render this? First thing, you need to prepare the scene to render on the format we need for the Lottie file. So we're not rendering here a movie. We're rendering a sequence of PNG images. It must be a PNG so it's transparent, right? So here on the second tab here called Output Properties, click here. And on output, you need to make sure that it's not selecting any kind of movie format. It's just selecting, where is it? PNG. So it must be PNG. The color should be RGBA 80 alpha, which means that it's transparent, right? Here you select the folder where you want to render the images. And then here on this tab, you make this whole scene transparent. So if I go back to shading, so if we render this now, it will be like a sequence of no transparent PNG images because we have the background here. The background is actually just something we configured to cast right color on the object. So we need to make the background transparent, meaning that we need to go here. We need to go to film and here transparent. So it's already transparent. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. It's because I'm not on the final render view. So if we go here to this one, this is actually the final result of a render. So this is like just something close so you can understand how light is working, how materials are working. And this is like the final result for your renders. This is exactly how your render is going to look like. And yeah, so if here on film, see that if I have this unselected, it's not transparent. So it must be selected transparent right here. So, okay, this is good. And here on format, we have our folder selected. We have, let me just select another folder so I don't mess up everything. Test, accept. And then, all good, we can render this. How do we render? Well, we can hit F12, but F12 only renders one keyframe. And we want to render all keyframes as an image sequence. So you can click here, render, and render animation. And then Blender will start rendering each one of the images. So you can see here that it's rendering one image at a time, right? And that's it. So it's going to render all the images, and it's going to save all these images into the folder you selected. So, for example, I have here my folder with all of these images. And this is what I handled before. And Blender takes care of naming your layers sequentially. So every layer, every image is a keyframe, right? And my scene was configured to render from 0 to 30 keyframes, right? And you can see that the images are coming in as I speak. Blender is rendering things here and creating the images, right? So let's stop here because I already have the images, right? We already know how to do all these things on Blender. Let's close this, and that's it. Now it's time to jump into After Effects. Okay, now we have After Effects open, and we are ready to create our Lottiefiles. Except we're not, because we have a problem here. So if I select each one of these images, you see that one image is already like half a megabyte. If I select all images, it's like 13, almost 40 megabytes, which is huge. So imagine the file size for this Lottie file. It will be huge, right? So what we need to do here is actually optimize all of these images before we move them into After Effects. So make sure that the file size is smaller and we won't like kill performance on our landing page, right? And for this, I simply use Tiny PNG. Very good website that allows you to optimize PNGs, WebPs, JPEGs. You can optimize any kind of image here. So all we have to do is take our images. It's like 20 images per time. So we need to do like, since it's 30, I need to through all like few images, then do it again. But I'll just show you like how it looks for 20 images. Okay, so selecting all these 20 images, almost 10 megabytes, right? And let me just move this to the side and put it right here. So take a look. You see, an image was like more than half a megabyte. Now it's like a tenth of the file size. So you see like the level of optimization we're doing here. And at the end, Tiny PNG saved us like 90% of the whole thing. So 9 megabytes saved and just like a few megabytes here. Sorry, a few kilobytes. And I already have here all my images optimized. And if you see here the little preview, you can barely notice like the quality loss here. So it's very good. And if I select all my images now, all of them together is like 1.5 megabytes. So this is acceptable for a website, right? So to have that 3D animation, like a megabyte and a half, a little bit less. Okay, that's okay, acceptable. Now, time to jump into After Effects. And here on After Effects, we need to import all those images. So I need to click here, import file, and let's go to my optimize and select everything. Now make sure that when you import all these images, you're not selecting PNG sequence, because if you do that, it will turn this into a movie, like just like a MP4 or something like that. We don't want that. We want all of the images individually imported right here. So selecting everything, import. All right, so we have all our images right here. Now we need to create a composition. New comp from selection, so we make sure that it's on the file right size and etc. Let me just change here the time, 3.5, nah, second and a half. It's good enough. We delete this. Now time to import all the images. Let's move right here. Great, so we have all of our images here, and it looks weird because it doesn't look like an animation. Now let's turn this image sequence into an animation. Let's drag this down. We need to make sure that every image, it's only occupying one keyframe here. Let me just drag this down. Yeah, so it's just one keyframe. Now we need to sequence these layers. So it's in the order you select layers is important. So select from 0 to 30. Now we right click here. We go to keyframe assistant and then sequence layers. Don't select anything here, just click OK. Now you see that it's a sequence of images. Every image occupies a keyframe, so it looks like a very fast image sequence, right? It looks like this because the amount of keyframes I selected to render my animation was very low. So I just rendered 30 keyframes. And it's important to do that because if you render a lot of keyframes, then your animation will be huge. You see that with 30 keyframes, it was like almost 10 megabytes and optimized a megabyte and a half. So we need to be careful on how many keyframes we render. Okay, yeah, but it's right there. So 30. You can even decrease the duration of this composition. Let's say 31. Yeah, that's it. That's all we need. So our image sequence is ready. Now time to turn this into Lottiefiles. So we need to go here, window, extension, and I'm going to use Lottiefiles for this. Okay, now we're ready to render our Lottie. So yeah, probably need to rename the layer, right? Let's rename this to Phantom UI Lottie. Okay, Lottiefiles again. So let's select this. And it's going to take a while because you need to render each one of the images to build the Lottie. So let's wait. Okay, it's ready. So yeah, it looks like this. And assets, yeah, you need to make sure that we are including assets in the JSON, so it's not like external images. Everything is included inside the Lottie file. Okay, and that's it. So if I click here, download, oh, it's rendering again, but if I click it on the button download, it will download the Lottie as a JSON. So let me cancel that because I already have this, and it's right here. And this is the Phantom Lottie. It's a JSON file, and we see that it's actually 4.28 megabytes, like more than we were expecting before, right? And this file size, it's not good for the web, right? It's not good to use on a landing page. So what we're going to do now is actually use the Lottiefiles optimizer. So here on Lottiefiles platform, I have some Lottiefiles here, and all I have to do is throw my Lottie right here. So it's going to import my Phantom Lottie JSON file. And okay, it's right here. Okay, and now if I click here, we see here that the original file is 4.3 megabytes, and the optimized Lottie JSON is less than a megabyte, actually 700 kilobytes. That's great for a Lottie file with images. Image sequences are usually heavy, but with the Lottiefiles optimizer, now we have like very good file size here, and we have this animation. Perfect, right? So all I have to do is download this, and now we're ready to go into Webflow and turn this into a scroll-based animation. All right, so here we are on Webflow, and this is the landing page I created. Okay, simple. And now how do we create this animation here? Everything is sticky on the screen. Actually pretty simple. I created a section called section Lottie. I added some vertical height, like 300 VH, so it's very tall. And this is the container for our animation. This is where we trigger the animation as we scroll. And inside of it, we have another layer called Lottie container. This is where the Lottie file and anything that is animated will be contained. And it's taking the whole screen, 100% per 100 VH, and it's a sticky layer. So it means that as we scroll, the Lottie container will stay sticky on the screen until we hit the end of the section Lottie, right? And then, yeah, we have all our elements right here. We have our Lottie file included right here, and Lottie. It's centering in the middle because Lottie container is using flex and centering everything. And then we have our Phantom Lottie here. Simple stuff, just using position relative to make sure that it's on top of everything else. We have our gradient background here. It's hidden because it's okay. Was without opacity, so this is like the background light. And then we have 4 layers here called Phantom UI image wrapper. So we have 4 of them for each one of these cards. And why we have that, it's because we want to scale everything from the middle to the edges, right? If I just scale individually these shapes, then it will be very hard to make them come from the middle to the edges. So I'm using a container to actually contain these images. So the image is right here. And we position with some combo classes here. So it's basic stuff. All of these are using flex, and then using flex align to move things around. And then we use this with position relative to just move a little bit the images, right? And then here on the section, we have 2 interactions. The first one is for the UI elements that actually takes care of doing this, like the background light and the cards scaling from the center and like doing a little movement and also fading in. So all of these are things that are controlling all the things behind the Lottie, right? And then we have one only for the Lottie file, only starting when it's fully visible, and then like we had a little offset here to make sure that it ends on the right place. And obviously very simple. All we do here is one Lottie control here on the interaction at 0% when it starts, and the other one at 99%. Again, this is a trick I mentioned in another video before. Never use 100% because it might break the functionality that animates the Lottie. I don't know why, but I always do 99% and it works. And that's it. So if I click here, I will see the animation of the Lottie file. So yeah, it's very simple. We have here a very interesting animation done with Webflow, a Lottie file which is less than a megabyte. It's image sequence, everything looks good, and that's it. So the hard part is actually creating the Lottie. The easy part is just jumping into Webflow and create this interaction. It's very simple, right? So yeah, that's how we create a Lottie. But you see that we have problems with file size, we need to optimize everything, so not all the time Lottie is the right solution for this kind of effect. So when do we use Lottifiles to create these kind of interactions? Well, first, it must be a small animation. A small animation that allows you to just use a few keyframes. So like we see before, we used 30 or 31 keyframes to generate this animation on the landing page. So it's a small set of keyframes. So it must be a small animation. It can't be like a 30-second video. That won't work as a Lottie file at all. It must be like simple objects, because like the more objects, the more complexity you have on your 3D scene, the bigger will be the images you're going to render, which means the bigger the file size of Lottie will be. So performance will be hurt, even if you optimize a lot, right? And obviously, when you need a 3D animation that needs to be interactive and needs to work with Webflow interactions, yeah, Lottifiles for me is the only choice here. So make sure that you have a small animation. It's like using simple objects. It's not hugely complex. And then that's it. You can have an interaction like that on Webflow. So that's it. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned a lot here. And make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications, because I'm planning a lot of content like this and more stuff related to Webflow and interactions in the future. So make sure to stay tuned. That's it. Bye.